And also, obviously, just to make a small introduction, since you are here, obviously, you have seen the announcement. Leandro Melendez is actually the case's performance testing advocate. So we really hope to learn something brand new today. Thank you very much again for having you here.
Thank you very much, and welcome everybody. Thank you to everyone watching and attending. It is such an honor and a pleasure to be here sharing some new knowledge. And as Costas mentioned, hopefully you will get not a new thing from today. Hopefully there will be quite a bit. So what are we going to be talking about? I'm going to be telling you a little bit on evolution or evolving your performance testing practices to get away from just thinking of performance as load automations. There's much, much more than that to performance testing that just load automations. But before I move further, quickly, for the ones that do not know me, I am Leandro Melendez. I am a developer advocate with K6. If you want, take a look. It's an awesome tool, very good for performance, continuous, load tests as well. SRE, many other applications, even browser testing. You can use K6 for many different things. As I was saying, I am Leandro Melendez, also known as Señor Performo, not so secret identity that, well, it all started with a blog that I started to write. You can find it here at srprf.com. I need to get back writing more on it, but there's good information if you want to learn a little bit more from performance testing. But if you want a little bit more information, questions, you can find me on all the social networks. As you know, as you can tell, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and as well on YouTube. I started a YouTube channel. I have some videos explaining things. I generate interviews, content, and some explanations that you can find on my YouTube channel, Señor Performo, ENG for English content. But if you are at ease with Spanish or want to practice it a little bit, Señor Performo without ENG, that content will be in Spanish. Speaking of Spanish, I am as well the host of the Perf Bites Español, the Spanish version of the Perf Bites podcast, where we discuss and we try to break language barriers and explain lots of things regarding performance. And here and there, I am a co-host at the English show, where as well we publish lots of interviews, lots of fun, and lots of events. And as you can see me here, I like to do some public speaking. I like to do some explanations and presentations. Gladly, we're starting to be back into the person or presential public speaking. I hope that stays and that doesn't go away anymore. And well, but we also do it on virtual whenever there's a chance. I'm very happy to turn on the camera and tell you about these topics. Last but not least, I am an author. Just this year, I managed to last year, I managed to publish my book, The Hitchhiking Guide to Load Testing Projects, which will guide you in a fun way through all the steps that you need to do for a traditional load testing project. Look for it. It's an Amazon print paperback, hardcover, and Kindle store. Any format, any version. And I think it is being delivered all over the world. So take a look at it, Amazon store. Don't miss it. So enough about me. I want to now give a thank you to the amigos at Agile Actors that invited me, gave me the opportunity to give you this talk, to give you this presentation. Thank you very much, amigos. And thank you very much to everyone that is watching this, that is attending. I think this is being recorded. So if you're watching it afterwards, also, I'm very, very, very thankful that you are paying attention to what I have to say, and hopefully that you learn a lot out of it. Now, speaking of what I have to say, I'm going to divide today this presentation in a few modules or steps. First, I'm going to talk about performance testing. What, why, what is it? There are lots of confusions around it. So I'm going to give you some definitions, explain some differences, and help you understand what really is it, what should we be caring about, and why is it important. Then I'm going to talk to you about old performance and the new ways in which we can present it, so that you can identify if you are doing things the old ways or if you are kind of probably a little misguided, and to identify what are the elements of the modern performance practices. Then I'm going to go quickly over new roles, new things that we need to be paying attention. How are these new changes in the mindset, in the people, in the roles, to effectively provide good performance in our applications. And I will close with some more tips, some more details, some more recommendations that will help you to embrace this modernity for performance testing. So let's get going. What? Performance? What is it? What do I eat it with? Okay, so let's start with performance testing or performance in general. One thing that I want you to have super clear: performance testing is not the same as load testing. That's the first one. Everyone or most of the people that I know, when we get to a project and they hear we need to do performance testing, the very thing that you think right away, or most think right away, is load testing. That performance and load is the same. I'm going to performance test. I'm going to do a bunch of automations and slam the system and try to bring it down and see how far can I push it. No, that's not precisely performance testing. Load testing is a subfamily of performance testing, but it is not all. I generally give an analogy here. It would be the same as you would say if you were saying Microsoft Word is the same as Microsoft Office. We know it's not the same. Microsoft Office is a bunch of different tools and platforms that you can use, and Microsoft Word is one of them. Beware. Load testing, automating and slamming the system is one of the things that you can do on performance testing. Now, the other misconception is whenever we think of performance, right away we think the automations. Oh, what are the JMeter's that we need to do, the load runners, we need to start working on scripts. It's a good part of it, I can't deny it, but it's not all of it. There is a big and growing set of characteristics and types of things that we can do to have good performance that it doesn't involve automations. So what is performance testing then, if it's not all what I'm saying? We will start with a dictionary definition, like start from scratch. What is performance? What is testing? Let's see, and start defining what is each one of these things. Performance. We are performance testing in a dictionary definition talks about the efficiency and the speed of an action. We're talking about software, so performance applied to software is how fast and how efficient is our software. That's it. Straightforward, easy, how well it does. Now, testing. Testing refers to the activities in which we validate, we verify, we check things, we measure them, we test them. The decision of if it's good or bad, that's another one. But testing, it refers mostly about being aware of what is the status of things. And if we put them together, performance testing, systems performance testing, IT-wise, because we can performance test almost anything that you can think of. System performance testing is any uppercase letters. Beware, these are uppercase letters, super important, pay attention. Any mean or any way in which you can validate, verify, or check or measure the speed and efficiency of your software. Any way, any mean, okay? Beware. So to make sure that this sinks in, performance testing is any mean that you can use to validate and verify how efficient and fast is your software. That's it. We will get into other flavors that are the ones that we go crazy about. But another thing that I want you to be clear or understand very well is that, let's go to this next one. What is not performance testing? Because there are so many confusions. I'll give some space to a little puppy to be sad that those confusions exist. So Performance testing is not only automating. It's super fun. It's a crucial part of performance testing. I won't deny it, but it's not the only way in which we can do performance tests. We can also instrument our software. We can observe it. We can measure it from afar. We can organically, with people, real people and users, using the software. This may sound a little bit redundant, but with real people, measure, observe, and validate that speed and that efficiency. Yes, it can be done manually. In the old days, we're like, manual performance testing, that's non-existent or a waste of resources. Well, it started to become a very important way in which you can do it. Also, performance testing is not only slamming the system, it's not only load testing, pushing it to its limits, and especially nowadays when we are evolving our methodologies, our systems, our technologies, where our components are, we shouldn't care that much only about load, because also it's becoming a little bit difficult to reliably measure and say, I push the system and this is the limit. We have elastic systems. I mean, I'm getting a little bit ahead, but there are many other things that we need to pay attention other than load testing. The other one is performance testing should not be an afterthought. Traditionally, we used to do performance testing or start thinking about it right before we release to production. In the waterfall days, in the old days, it was we start planning the system, we gather all what we need, we start developing, we start testing, and even at the very end of the testing phase, there comes performance testing, which in other words was load testing on those days. No, performance testing is not and should not be an afterthought or something that you do right before you release to production. So what it is exactly, some examples. Let's move into what are the things that performance testing cares for. What we are going to be paying attention or dealing with the most when we talk about performance testing are three things, the Triforce of performance testing. There are three components that will define almost everything around our performance test when we think about performance. First, as I mentioned, we have time, the response time, the speed, how fast is our software responding. This can be to any action, inaction, when there's nothing happening or we just put the system. That response time is part of what we are going to be paying attention, generally measured in seconds, milliseconds, or days, or there are processes that take hours or days, so that counts as performance measurements. The other one that we are going to be paying attention to are metrics, the impact. How are we going to know what is the impact of the action in our software? Is through measurements on this impact. Measurements on hardware, measurements on other components, measurements on even the impact could be satisfaction of a user, how happy are them, user drop levels, rage clicks when it's not loading and they keep clicking. Those impacts, we need to measure them. What happens when our software? The most common ones are the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Those are the most common that we will be measuring: CPU, RAM, disk, and network. But there are many, many other elements that we will want to pay attention to when we are measuring this impact. And last, we have a scenario, a circumstance, something that under which circumstances are we gonna measure the impact and response time, the response time of our software. There's no scenario that covers everything. There are risk scenarios that we want to make sure that we care for or measure or validate how we'll perform or survive in terms of our system. And all the scenarios, here's where your load testing will fall into. It's one of the scenarios or a few of the possible scenarios that we can test for, but there are many, many other more, not only slamming and several users. And we need to pay attention to those others because they become important, time-saving, efficient, and many other things that we will see. So these scenarios also can be no users in the system. Think of a car just being turned on. how much gasoline will it consume just by being turned on, so that you will know how much is just from the power of the engine and how much is consumed when you are truly moving. Just a silly example. Those scenarios can be when I turn on a container, I start another instance on my solution. So there are many scenarios that are not only load, that are very important and that we should be paying attention to, because there are risk factors in the performance is most what we care for. And speaking of care for, why? Why should we be caring for performance? Why is it so important that we don't get into trouble like this little child? So if you are like the puppy here, writing a system, trying to move fast, trying to work through it, trying to do, even if you are a customer of the system, you are using the application that you're developing to sell something, or even if you are internal corporate user, an employee, using it to do your work, your daily activities. If the software starts to be slow, we're not getting into reliability or capacity or pushing load into the system. I'm just speaking of slowness. It starts to slow, and we can see that even without load. That's if I share a story every time that I see a system being slow without load. So what happens with our users, employees, blah? They start to get frustrated, and frustrated users are not happy users. And this applies, as I said, to employees. So what happens to customers and employees that are using our system and it's slow, it's unavailable, or it's not a good experience to use it? Well, we will have bad sales. We will have bad productivity. If the customers cannot bring as much as they want, or buy as much as they want, or buy it easily, or buy it, period, they will leave. And we won't have a sale, or we won't have as many sales as we would like to have, or provide services. It's not only about sales. The other one is productivity. We generally create a system internally for our employees to make them more productive, right? We do a big investment into this system for them to be productive. And if the system is not enabling them and is kind of slow and it doesn't perform, well, they are not productive. Our investment is not returning as we expected. So beware, there are so many problems that there may not be work, there may not be sales, the employees may be frustrated, low morale, lost customers, all sorts of problems that, well, sounds a little bit evident why we may want to choose one or choose to do it, right? So, because if we do not do performance, as I was saying, if we don't pay attention to it, we don't take care about the performance, well, we will lose revenue. As I said, probably we won't have enough sales, we won't provide enough services to our customers, our employees will be probably not that as efficient, but on the public side, we will lose clients, customers. And many of us maybe know this, but once a customer gets jinxed with your site, with your platform, with your solution and says this sucks, it's very difficult or highly improbable that they will ever come back. So you can get angry clients, lost clients, angry users, internal users. All of this will translate into costs, lost money, money that you have to reinvest, money that you have to spend. And if there's an issue that makes it to production, to remediate it will be super difficult, will be very expensive, tears, blood. No, it's going to be awful. Don't do it. But if you pay attention to performance, you will have good outcomes. You will have money, you'll be able to sell a lot, happy users, you have lots of income. And for the users, customers, I mean, customers, you have them loyal customers. If your application doesn't performs well, it would be like those social networks. We cannot stop scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. First thing we do when we wake up, we start scrolling and scrolling because we're happy, we enjoy them, they perform. We have loyalty towards them. And with our internal users, our employees, the same thing happens. If they are happy, if they, I mean, at least you want them to not to hate the work that they do because it's slow and non-performing. And if you have all these things that I'm going to recommend you, and if you performance test, if you apply and are mindful about it, when something happens, you'll catch it early, and that will translate into lower costs. And as well, if it makes it into production, if you have issues, again, the cost to fix it and the effort will be way, way lower. So let's move a little bit and identify first, because many of you probably are already doing some performance implementations, you're trying to do some things, but you may be struggling, you may be having pain. And this most often, based on personal experience, is because you're still trying to do things the old ways. So what are these old ways? So modernity. Everyone starts to think about modernity, and many say like, oh, digital transformation. Yeah, we are getting into that. That's so old. That's so 2000s, 20, 15 years ago, 10 years ago. Everyone is already digitally. Most companies, S&P 500 companies that traditionally in the stock market used to be divided like this is a technology company, this is food. Many of them started to fall into technology because technology is everywhere, and want it or not. Another thing that companies that say that they are modern, that they are super ahead, that they say, yeah, we're agile, we're continuous DevOps, all those fancy terms, but they still release into production every 3 months, every 6 months, not as often as they should. Some of these things are affecting them. And some of the others that I see in organizations that are trying to modernize, that are trying, that's why you see here, they're still Doras, super modern in there. That's not how things for. And when you have different teams, like this is a team, this is a performance team, this is a developer team, and you're saying you're agile, probably you're not that well there yet. When you have different, when they hand over what they just programmed, there's a lot of time lost. There's a lot of inefficiency on that. There's a lot of pain around that. So what is truly this modernity then? So nowadays we have Agile, we have DevOps, continuous, Scrums, all these new methodologies and ways to deliver software that, thanks to the internet, thanks to the distributed nature of it, we are having to do things differently, and we are becoming able to do many new things that are different that we couldn't before. On top of that, some different things that we are getting into the cloud. We are having the software as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure, everything as a service. Because speaking of, everything is moving into services, microservices, as I said, into the cloud. And who knows, we have artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, the metaverse, as that's why we have here the Visor, the goggles, because how are we going to be testing that? The performance in those things is super important as well. We have our watches, smart fridges, smart devices. When I say the name, I'm going to say it in Spanish so that I don't invoke anyone's device at home. Alejandra, that's in Spanish. Turn off my lights. I want that to happen quickly with not too many resources. So performance is important there. But if you are still doing things the old ways, in the traditional ways, in the Stone Age ways, you may be trying to pull things a little bit in the waterfall ways. As I already said earlier, trying to do only load testing at the end, just before releasing into production, that's Stone Age practices. You should not be thinking about performance testing just before releasing. If you are just trying to automate and do a load test before release, that's very old, very bad. No, please try to fix it, try to work it. Because if you do that performance test or assurance in that way, you may be doing performance tests only once in a while, only a few times. You are not that aware of what is the performance of your solution. Why? There's another thing why you're trying to do this load test, because you are trying to measure the performance of your application through automations. Yes, they are a very good device to tell you what is the performance, but shouldn't be the only one. There are many more modern things and practices that you can try. Another thing to measure the performance, because only through automations, the downside of it is that you will measure it only when you execute the automations. What happens if they break? What happens if you cannot execute them? What happens if you are just doing load tests? Lots of issues. And the other one is production. Traditionally, production was untouchable. Oh no, thou shalt not touch production. No. Nowadays, in these modernities, we have multiple ways, multiple methodologies, practices that will enable you to test safely in production. And again, don't think of performance testing as only load testing. You will see that's the very last thing that you need to worry about. And then very weird and specific cases. For everything else, like MasterCard, you should know the performance of your production environment. Yes or yes. That's so many organizations that I will arrive at, and I would say, okay, what are your current performance metrics? How is your system doing before I do any load tests or anything? And they're like, we don't know our performance. We have no idea. What? How? What? That's what we brought you here for. Uh-oh. So beware, try to understand that you should touch production. You should know the performance of your productive environments, not just load testing. I know many may be saying, how am I going to do? I may bring down the system. You are not trying to do a load test. You want to know the performance. It's different. So start absorbing that and stay away from these Stone Age or Egyptian age practices, ancient Egyptians, because I mean, we have modern Egyptians, nothing against you fellows. But it's important that you step away from only these practices. There are so many other things that you can do for performance testing. So it's kind of evident now that we must change, that we need to do things differently. We need definitely to let go our old practices, our old ways, our old ways of thinking. Let me just quickly do something, because I just noticed I left the WhatsApp going and we don't want that noise interrupting. So we need to let go of the old practices, of the old ways of how we used to do performance. I mean, it's valid. At times we will still need to do the old performance practices, but no, it's not the only way. We need to embrace new ways. We need to welcome these changes that are happening, all these services, all these mini instrumentations, mini automations, lots of crazy things that I'm gonna explain. We also need to evolve our productive environments. We are already kind of doing it. We're already moving them into the cloud. We are already spreading them into services and putting them, our solution may not be in a single server anymore. Most probably it isn't. Part of it is in this server farm. The other one is in Amazon Web Services. The other one is a data center, I don't know, in Dublin, spread all over the place. So we need to evolve our productive environments accordingly to be able to performance test. Everything is becoming different. Everything is evolving. So what can we do? So in this new future, what's in the same side? We need to start thinking of how can we have performance or know the performance in an omnipresent, omniscient way. What do I mean? That we know the performance of our solutions, applications, services, distributed servers, not to think as a single element. No, we have just like a hive mind spread all over the place, our solutions. Even for the monolithic ones, we need to know the performance at all time, at all place, and from everyone. That's why I say omnipresent, omniscient, all the times. Why? Because we are also getting, on top of all this complexity, these continuous sprints. We have new releases, new stuff, hopefully being pushed into production and tested continuously. We need to step away and let go of those handovers. What do I mean with the handovers? Okay, I'm the developer. I created my code. I compile it. I have it ready, and then I pass it. I hand over it to the tester, to the scripter, to the performance person. That's a huge waste of time. If you think about it, in an average sprint, a 10-day, 2-week sprint, in reality, we have at the best 8 days. Why? Because we have the sprint planning, the initiation, all that at the beginning, the very first day of the sprint. And at the very last day, we have the retrospectives, we have the analysis, we try to wrap up, we try to release. So in reality, we only have best case 8 days only. So we got to work through that continuously and know the performance continually. We cannot be wasting time like we used to before. And another thing that we need to look into this future that we already live in. The MVP, the minimum viable product, already happened. If we are doing things right, our product, our software is already in production. As I said, there's no time to waste. We have to hurry. We have to change the mindset because all of these different components. So let's go over, as I was saying, I propose to do some changes, mostly in the roles, in the tasks, and how we approach performance. Speaking of these roles, I'm going to give a quick analogy for ourselves as performance testers, the team as an IT solution development team, management as well needs to change the mindset and understand this. This applies to everyone, especially for the performance engineers, but applies to anyone and everyone in the team. So if you remember Pokemon, this series that really old series, I hope everyone had a chance to watch it or get involved with it. At the beginning, I mean, on those days, in my good old times, there were 150 Pokemons, 151 for the connoisseurs. And if you remember well, these Pokemons used to have only one power, one ability, one skill set, I believe it was named. One of them was the fire one. We had the plant one, or the grass type, or the water one, but only one element. They were good at only one thing. There were hundreds, and it's similar to what we had before. We had the scripters, the ones that would create the performance scripts, and that's the only thing that they did. We had hundreds of them, tens of them, several. There were too many of them. What they would do is just script, execute, give results, and that's it. They didn't understand the code. They wouldn't see it. They had no other skill sets or areas, talk to management, no. Script, execute, test, validate. It was the same for QA. We had the mindset of just this. We, like these Pokemons, need to evolve. Our teams, our members need to become like these modern Pokemons. I have no idea how many are there out there anymore. There are so many. I lost track. They can mix. They have evolutions. You throw special stones on them. It's crazy. But the best element of it is that each one of them doesn't have only one element anymore. Now they have a new element here, another here, another here, a new element that is on top of their base skill. These Pokemons, I mean, these three ones come from the same one. These three ones have a strength in the fire. They were the dragon, the little Charmander, now Super Charizard or Mega Charizard, whatever is the name, but they have an extra skill. One, or even there are Pokemon super special that have 3, 4, I don't know how many. We need to be like them, multi-talent Pokemons, evolve ourselves. We cannot be just like, I just test, I just execute, I just script, I just run load tests. No, we need to evolve and get more talents. I'm speaking in a different way about the T-shaped or E-shaped people that we should have in our teams. Why? Because our teams are smaller. We don't have those tens or hundreds of testers, of scripters. It's a small team. We need to be able to change hats to help the others. Oh, your development is kind of broken. I detected a defect in the development. I can fix it. The tester fixing a defect. All those role changes can happen because now I have those skill sets. I expanded, I share the tasks, And the same for the developer. Hey, developer, I have this process and I'm going to get a little bit more into that. Can you automate it? Can you test it? Please test it. Let me know the results. What? The developer's testing? Yeah, that's possible. And actually, that's something that I don't know why it didn't happen. Oh, I should move over here. It didn't happen like that before. I have something that I'm starting, PDD, Performance-Driven Development. There's a GitHub repository. Go to GitHub /SRPRF, Señor Performo -PDD, and you will read a little bit on what is the proposal here. PDD suggests that you should have the performance metrics that you should care for in advance and provide it to the developer. You should not be wasting time handing over. And that's why I have this example here of the chef. If we are still the ones that automate the test, it would be like someone at the kitchen preparing something, let's say a soup. It's putting the soup, put it on the bowl, putting the decoration, putting cream on top, putting some crackers, and passing it to the waiter or someone else to test it, okay? Oh, it needs salt, it needs pepper, a little bit more of tomato. What the tester does is give the defects, the observations, and send back to the cook. But the dish is already assembled. The handover, hand back, all that time lost happens in performance. And when it's sent back, has to disassemble the soup that already put the crackers, already put the new ingredients and put it back together and hand it over again to see, okay, is it good or finally, oh, it needs a little bit more. So much time lost there that if the QAs are not testing there, if the developer cooking the soup right away, it's good. You told me it should taste like that. It tastes like that. I can pass it over. QA and performance should work like that. The performance-driven development, the performers should not be automating that much. They should tell the developer, hey, when you create your code, how about you script it to trigger your new process? When you trigger it, how about you check for this, you check for that, and you check for this other thing. And when you're ready, run your automation and make sure that you can check in your code or do a pull request that will be performing. And you already know the performance. Isn't that awesome? It's right there, right there. We didn't lose time. The performance engineer was just giving feedback and input. And that's something that, whoa, what am I going to be doing as a performance engineer now if I'm not scripting? Well, you should be mentoring. You should be helping the team. And this goes to those differences in roles that I was saying earlier. The performance champion now, not necessarily the engineer, the performance champion shouldn't be just scripting, shouldn't be just like automate. Oh, I receive more code, more new things that are already built, compiled, ready to ship. I don't know how they work internally. Script it, reverse engineer it, try to, no, that's a huge waste of time. The performance champion, the performance person should be guiding the teams, telling them in advance, this new feature, this new requirement that you have, you should be careful with this, you should be careful with that, you should integrate this, you should do some automations, you should have telemetry, you should have instrumentation. And I will tell you, why should you care? If you don't care about it, you have a problem in production, will be expensive. If something breaks, you'll be called over the weekend, at the end of the sprint, you'll be in trouble. You don't want to be in trouble. So they will show them why it is important. They will involve the people. They will, the performance person will teach the team how to automate, how to care, what to care for, and let them keep rolling. And when the team is ready enough, because now you have smaller teams, the performance person will be able to jump to another team and start teaching them. We'll be teaching to fish instead of fishing for them. Because if you are the fisher, you become a bottleneck, you become a problem in the organization, and you're the one super tired and stressed to run your executions right at the end of the sprint, and everyone is on your shoulder. Are you done? Are you done? We want to go home, or we already left, and whatever happens with the sprint is your your fault. That's blaming? No, the performance person should be helping everyone. Now, many argue that how am I gonna get experience or understand this performance thing? I have another recommendation. On top of that, it's very important that we have I am calling it the performer supreme, or the CPO, the chief performance officer, the performance engineer, senior engineer, whatever you want to call it. You need to have someone in your organization that is the main person who will be setting the guidelines, who will be saying and telling to the champions what it should be done, what is important, what processes, if they need telemetry, if they need APMs, if they need instrumentation, if they need to take care for this, for that. He will be guiding the champions and setting all those best practices, and at the same time mentoring them, explaining, oh, you have this in that team, but it's one person permeating the knowledge. It's not management anymore. It's not administration. It's not that old days that we are spanking everyone like, hey, come, run, run, run. Probably spanking is the bad word. Whipping everyone. My mom used to spank me, so that's why I have that in mind. You need to change the mindset. It's a leader, a guide that permeates the knowledge into the champions. Probably eventually one of those champions becomes a performer supreme, a senior performance, or something like that. But you need that structure. The way that we used to do things before, like a scripter assigned in the team, always trying to keep up with all the functionalities and automate, try to run, check what broke, that doesn't work anymore. As I said earlier, if the developer who is creating the automation, who is testing it, oh, I have to have an automation together with my code, my new thing. I did a change to the code that broke the automation. I am there. I know how to fix it right away, right there and then, instead of having the performance person wanting to die at the end of the sprint because so many things broke and no one knows how, why, how to fix it, how to bring it back. So let's see. I have a few more tips. I know we're getting close to give some time for Q&A, but I'm going to give you some more ideas, some more tips of how your teams can embrace performance assurance, know it all the time, which will borderline a little bit on SRE. Reliability, know the performance at all time, but not only the performance, know that the system is there, that is alive, that is well. So first of all, think of performance testing early. As soon as you wake up, yeah, I'm going to start performing. And by this, I have a saying, start thinking of it from day -1. Even before you start to create your project, your MVP, the first digital brick that you put in your construction, start thinking of how are you going to measure and take care of the performance, be aware of it, remediate it. What do I need? Do I need an APM? Where do I need the APM? Where do the servers are going to go? What is a good distribution? Do I need load balancers? All these things, not only in terms of what am I going to measure, but how am I going to make it easier? Do I need a Jenkins? Do I need K6 as an automation tool? Do I need any other? Do my teams are developing in Python? Why Python? Is that a good choice? Okay, we chose Python, then probably we need Locusts. If it's Java, probably it's easier to have a K6 engine that is the same. What type of things am I going to be doing so that my team integrates better? Am I going to use Grafana to look at the results? Am I going to use, I don't know, Elastic or Kibana or any of the other ANAs? What am I going to put together so that my team is as efficient as possible, even before I start? Now, when you already start, you are not just doing performance just before release, just automating and just trying. You're thinking it from the very beginning. At every sprint planning session, requirements session, you bring together the three amigos. As we know, the product owner, the end user, whoever calls the shots, the developer, and the performance tester or the QA. I mean, you can have both, I would recommend. All of them will get together and say the best practices. The PO or the user will say, hey, we need this feature. The developer will say, hey, I know how to do it. I will do it this way. Let's create a task. And the QA or performance person will say, hey, you should automate it with this. You should insert some telemetry and instrumentation in your code so that I know and all the team knows the performance at all time. I'll get into that in a moment. And everyone is aware of it every time, everywhere. And when you finish it, you run the script and you measure the things that I told you that you should measure and be aware for so that you can mark your task as done. so that the continuous platform accepts your change, your input, your PR, your pull request. It's very important that at the very beginning, we request that, and that the performance person is there to give some insight, feedback, indications, and requirements. And as I was saying, it's important to have understanding or sight beyond sight, to have awareness of the performance of our application at every moment. How do we do that? Through observability everywhere and at every moment. I highly recommend you to have an APM, an observability platform, something that will tell you what's the performance of your application, regardless of automations. What would you get? How can you get this? As I said, through APMs, through telemetry, through instrumentation, but have it on every environment, on every box of your solution. Not that only production, no. I know that it may increase costs and bring you issues if you put it on the other environments, but it's really important that as your software moves from dev or from requirement to dev to staging to QA or whatever is a move towards production, that you know what is the performance of that new code approaching your productive environment. Because if it is not performing, you will be able to stop it there. What you will get out of that is that any action, whoever does the action, you will know the performance. And an advantage or something that you need to take care of is to integrate the performance metrics that you will get with everything. All the team should be able to see them, not locked in an environment that only Tableau can see them. No. Something that all the team can access, or all the organization, even, like, make it as public. It's performance metrics. Who cares about those? Everyone should care. I mean, they are not like top secret stuff. Shouldn't be. And that the CI/CD platform can access them as well. Automations can access them as well. And well, speaking of automations, they are super important. You should be automating a lot. Not the tester, the team should be automating a lot for continuous, for DevOps, for all these processes. But a key element here is that you should be automating with the right amounts and on the right places. What do I mean with this? I give this example. It's a term that has been around for a long time, but I see a lot of people still doing it backwards. So here you have it with, I hope, a fun example that will help you understand it. Here with you is the Aztec automation pyramid of sacrifices. What do I mean with this? For the ones that are familiar with the pyramid at the base, you have the unit automation tier. All the unit automations go here. Next, you have the service automations. And here at the top, you have the end-to-end or the front-end automations for performance. This applies for every type of automation that you can think of, but specifically on performance, it's also super important. So at the unit level, at the base, you see is the widest, is the longest. You have almost full coverage, and almost no organization puts attention to this. And this is tasty. This is good. This is easy to implement. Is the cheapest. It's like guacamole. Who doesn't want to have lots and lots of guacamole? It's awesome. It's not spicy. So you can have lots of them. The base, you should have lots of guacamole, lots of automations at the unit testing level, and try to get as many performance metrics from your unit testing. They are the cheapest, fastest, easiest. You can run them in parallel. You can run them continuously. Your SDK can be running them. Lots of benefits with them. Please try to test as much as possible, automate as much as possible in that tier. Next, we have the salsa tier or the service tier, where this salsa is not as spicy, so you can have a lot of it. It's still kind of wide, as you can see. Not as wide as the bottom, but kind of wide. Be generous with it. Here as well, service automations for performance and for QA in general are fast, easy to maintain. They are very kind of straightforward, have lots of benefits. You also can run them in parallel. You can load test them at little volumes, easier. Lots of benefits. Be abundant with them. Try to have lots of automations in that tier. Here is where I highly recommend K6 is an awesome solution. You can have lots of automations quickly and fast, done by your developers. Again, that's what I was saying earlier. It's very important that the tester is not the one burdened with that task, which at the same time will be burdening the team. Here, use those type of tools, service automation tools programmatically that the developers understand. And at the top, we have lots of automations that like to deal with front-end, end-to-end, browser-based testing. Those are sacrifices. Those are bloody, those are sad, painful. Try to do the very least. I know that there are times where there's no other way to test down here and you have to do the sacrifice, but still think it as a sacrifice. All these performance automations that have long steps, end-to-end steps. First I log in, then I do that, then I do the other one, they are super long, complicated, hard to maintain. Usually you need a tool for this tier where you need lots of maintenance, someone specialized. The developers probably do not understand it. Lots and lots of problems with this, and that's why it is a sacrifice. You will end up having all sorts of problems, tears, blood, hearts teared off of chests. Awful. Pay attention to the pyramid. Don't be like the organizations that has all sacrifices, tiny bit of salsa, and no guacamole. No guacamole, that's super sad. So now speaking of tools, I briefly talked about it. You shouldn't have only one tool. Please, please be like Batman. Batman has all the tools possible in the belt, a batarang, a smoke bomb, fire something, a light, everything. Try to have as much as possible. Try to step away of this mindset that one tool will solve all your QA problems. It's not possible. There may be vendors trying to cramp up as much as possible in their tools, but no tools will be able to solve everything. Beware. There are some that are better, as I said, in the pyramid, for the higher tier, some that are better for the middle, some that are better for the lower, but no single tool will be good for everything. Sometimes you will need one, have it. Sometimes you will need the other one, have it, embrace it. Be as malleable as possible, provide your team as much as they need. Don't close your mind to that. Always giving the example of Lord of the Rings. Don't be like Gollum, that one ring to rule them all, and because you already paid for it, you're like, Gollum, Gollum, my precious, and you will just want to hold it, you want to protect it. No. Every tool, different tools for different type of tests, different tools for different tiers in your solution. And speaking of tiers and solutions, start testing in production. There are many ways that you can do it. It's not forbidden anymore, as I said earlier. There are several release techniques, blue-green, canary, A/B, feature toggles, all sorts of things. And let others test in production for you. Even load tests, that's super important. You can do load tests in production. Yeah, with real people. Yeah, without automations. Yeah. How can you do it? With a mix of real people here and robots, automations, synthetics, mix them, make them work in production with the release techniques, canary, blue-green, beta testers. They will be super happy to load test your system. You just send a few of the users, a subsystem, blue environment. Let's see how it is doing. Key, observe, control, and tune whatever is happening when you release into production, when you are running these tests with real users. Now, mix them. Synthetics are super important. Automations for SRE specifically and performance. When your user cannot access your system, they will leave and you won't have performance metrics. With the synthetics, if you schedule them to work here and there, they will keep telling you, oh, the system is down. Hey, the system is still down, which a real user probably won't tell you. So beware. And now, at last, finally, after so many things, after looking so many futures, so many things that we were working, finally, we can do load testing. There are two key elements with load testing. Do it small. Don't try to do those big ass load tests that we had in the past. The important ones is that you continuously can do quickly and at a small scale, because the software is already in production. You already know that it performs. You just want to check that this new thing that you're pushing is not breaking whatever is already performing. So do many load tests, multiple load tests, but smaller. Just on a term that I like a lot from chaos engineering and SRE, when you do a chaos test, check the blast radius. The blast radius of your load test must be relevant to what you are trying to test and what you are releasing. Small load tests. There are times, yes, when you will have to bring down the system, test it very few times. Seriously, it's so rare now that you have to do those big ass load tests because you have the cloud, you have expansive environments, elastic environments, sorry, you have different tiers that can grow vertically, horizontally. Only when you have a huge event like Black Friday, like closing season, I don't know, declaration system with taxes, all those things, is very rare when you truly need to push the system to its last capacity. If you test for performance at little bits and you know that every piece on its own and at small interactions performs well, most probably will perform well at a higher level if it's already performing well with production loads. So beware, don't focus so much, leave it until the end. Seriously, everything else goes before a load test. Before you think of a massive big ass load test, think of those continuous, these synthetics. Do not obsess over the rest. And that's it. Sorry, I extended a little bit. Time's out. As Gandalf said to the little hobbits, fly, you fools, go and change the world, go and make it better, improve and evolve your performance practices. And well, time for Q&A. If I don't have enough time, you can find me at SRPRF or Leandro or Señor Performo, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, all of the networks. Go to my page, shoot me a note. I'll be more than happy to help you. And now it's time for some Q&A. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Amazing, actually. I really liked it. To be honest, I had in mind that you are going to do something hands-on, but I don't regret it at all. So well done. That was pretty amazing. And I was thinking right before that would be my question, actually, but you already covered it. So I was thinking right before you did this analogy with the Pokemon to ask you what's your opinion about when I see job posts that they say, okay, I'm looking for a performance engineer, I'm so pissed off because it's so much more. And then you did this analogy. So yeah, that was pretty amazing. And I think Kostas will agree. He prefers the word, the term actually software development engineering test because it's this skill-shaped professional that we are looking for. So yeah, it's exactly the direction we are looking to go as well.
Awesome. Yeah, it's very important that we expand our skills, performance, especially. You need to understand a lot of different pieces, different things. Performance engineering, S.E.T.I, or all these new roles that are growing is not anymore just a scripter. So we need to start growing our knowledge, understanding a little bit, and trying new things, definitely.
Thank you very much, Leandro. Again, I will, let's say, compliment what Stelio said. It was amazing presentation. And one question that I have, I actually think that there are a lot of things that could come as a question. One of them is, suppose that, we are having our platform, it's based on microservices, so we have small services, hopefully. And many times we are discussing about having performance test, which is actually, as you said, an umbrella term. So we have load test, we have spike test, we have soak test, we have all these things. So how this could fit into a pipeline which will run also other things like security scanning, component testing, functional testing, build, of course, which at some point might take some time. So my one question is this, and the second question has to do with synthetics, which is very interesting concept, and how can we leverage their usage, especially in let's say domains which have some kind of transactionality there, like banking, for example. This pretty much.
Okay, so for the first question, the types of tests that you mentioned, are all flavors of load tests. Load testing, a spike test, an endurance test, a average load, or known as just a performance test, sadly. So all those are flavors of performance testing, and is something that you need to run when that is the risk that you are trying to mitigate. The type of tests or scenarios that you're going to be running, as I said, not only real users or no user, single user, it depends on what is the risk that you are trying to detect. If you build a new piece of software and you're going to move it towards production, your risk at that moment is that that new piece of software may not perform or generate issues elsewhere. So that's why you design a scenario or a small load test that will clear that risk. If you have a new application, a new solution that you are gonna move into production, and you are uneasy, the risk is that it may not perform in the long term, not manage well resources, then you need an endurance test. But every time, if you are continuous, if you are pushing every sprint, every month at least, into production, you already know that the memory management is good. And when you have this new change that you're going to push, you don't need to run again everything or an endurance test. Probably you just do a spike test if that is the risk at that moment. So it's very context dependent on what are you trying to do and what are the risks that you are dealing with at that solution that released. Even with a different feature, it could be, okay, I'm going to do a test because this new feature deals a lot with database. I'm going to do a test for connection pools or some run, or when you request this new feature, you tell the developer, can you do a test that connects 10 times, that verifies how many full table scans, data reads, response time from the database? And then you may have something else that is just, I don't know, downloading a picture that has nothing to do with databases. You will do a complete different set of scenarios and runs that you may want to do. So here's where I'm saying you don't need anymore to focus that much just on the traditional load scenarios that we used to do. There are so many other things that we need to be paying attention to. And make sure that you know that the performance, because now that we are continuous, we don't care that much about those capacities, because again, we already know them. We care about these new things that we're moving towards production, that they don't bring more noise, and analyze deviations, variations, and that we know continuously the performance. In our previous sprint, the performance was good. The response time for, I don't know, service A was half a second, sometimes 0.2, sometimes 0.8, sometimes 1 second. But on average state, we introduce a change and suddenly spikes. That's what we care for. Not that much anymore for just load testing. If we have a risk scenario for that, yes, please do it in the traditional ways. But here's what I say, the mindset changes a lot on how you approach things. Now, testing in production, it is viable, possible, depends a lot on the solution and the nature of your platform. As the question came, how can I performance test in production when banking? First, performance test, you should have an APM, or you should have something that tells you the performance that your users are experiencing. Yes or yes, that's not optional anymore. I have seen many organizations, and I give this example. Airplanes, nowadays commercial airplanes, have instruments, have all these things that tell you altitude, fuel, inclination, speed, all these things that are important in an airplane. They consume a big amount of the weight of the plane. I think it's like a third of it. A commercial airline would say, well, I don't want to spend into having this that increases the weight of the plane. I'm taking it off and putting more people, and I can make more money, or will be cheaper. Many managers do that. I personally wouldn't fly on a plane that took off everything and it's just like a wheel, and blessings to the pilots so that they know. Many organizations are flying their planes without an idea of what is happening in their platforms. So if you have this and your users are already in production, you can test that. You can know the performance. You will know it right there and then. Second, when you have something new, there are many things that you can do to test in production with real users. One could be a blue-green or a canary or beta testers. You send this new version to a smaller server, you put it on a side and send those users. You tell them, hey, you're part of a beta tester. Or at times you don't even tell them. You can have feature toggles as well. Okay, this new feature, send the new users or a very small pool of the users, let them start clicking it. You are monitoring, you're paying attention. Oh, it's failing, the performance is bad. No, turn it off, turn on the new one with a feature toggle. So there are so many methodologies, techniques that you can implement to test and load test in production that even if it's banking, you should be fine. I mean, as long as you put especially if it's banking, pay a lot of attention on what is happening in production and be careful.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Leandro, for your presentation. It's going to be on YouTube, so accessible from everyone who was here today, or also others who were not here today. And hope to see you again soon, and at some time visit us here in Athens.
Would be my pleasure. Hopefully that'll happen soon now that we can be in different places.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a nice time.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.